Okay. Before I start, I would like to ask if you get a feeling for who's here. I know quite a lot of you, but I don't know everyone. So I'd like to get a feeling who is new to blockchain, who doesn't really know what blockchain is. Okay. We have a few people who are fairly new. I won't give a blockchain one-on-one talk today because the problem right now is that many people already know what it is. But I try to weave the logic of explaining what it is and what it can do into the background of what I'm trying to tell you with the token economy. So it's an experiment because it's the first time I'm trying to tell it that way. So basically, the token economy, who knows what a token is, or who can define a token, a cryptographic token, blockchain token? Anyone? Valentin?
Should I?
Yeah?
It's basically an entry in a ledger, decentralized ledger.
It's an entry in a ledger. Any other definition? A token? Yeah.
So it's sort of abstraction of some value, which can be, there are different types of utility token, security tokens. So this is the level of abstraction you go in order to represent some sort of asset which is hosted or which lives, so to speak, on the blockchain.
Okay. Did everyone understand? Okay, I'm trying some other words. It's true what has been said, but what is the token economy and how is it related to the possible future of money? So what is a token, or in that sense, token is a generic word, a blockchain token. The way I like to describe it, it's a currency of a distributed internet tribe. And in the case of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the native token of a distributed internet tribe called the Bitcoin network. And the rules of the tribe, including the monetary policy of the token, in that case the Bitcoin token, are governed by a computer code. In the case of Bitcoin, we call it the Bitcoin protocol. So the rules are governed by this Bitcoin protocol, and it runs on a distributed network of computers, on a peer-to-peer network of computers who are in the game voluntarily. And the code is automatically enforced when some predefined rules are met or triggered by certain events. What does that mean? Basically, it means that we're moving from this world to this world. This world was created in a time, long time ago, before we had something called the internet, when the printing press was only just invented. We really had difficulties to communicate over long distances. We could send pigeons. I think we didn't have the telegram back then. And the only way to meaningfully organize a large society over geographical distance was by having very rigid top-down management styles. And so traditionally, we have been organizing our society in a top-down way. Why? Because it is the transaction costs of organizing, or it is much more efficient to have that kind of organization, especially when communication is an issue, and especially when you need to get something done fast or coordinate a lot of people towards a certain goal. Now, this goal could be for profit, running a business. It could be non-profit, running an NGO. It could be running a country, anything really. It could be running a military. This is the type of organizations we've always had. Top-down management with one legal entity. Basically, it means you know who to sue. If you have a legal entity, you have an entry in some kind of registry somewhere, centralized registry. So if that organization does something fishy, you can sue them. With a lot of legal contracts regulating the relationships of the people working in that organization, for that organization, or with that organization. So any type of employment contract, legal contracts, any time of delivery contracts, supplier contracts, whatever contracts with governments. is regulated here. And if we're talking about how our society is organized, even our very beloved democracy is basically such type of organization. It's a representative democracy which has very rigid top-down management styles, and we basically go and vote every 4 years, and then we don't know what they do. A lot of the things are not very transparent because this technology, and it's a technology of organizing society, was invented very long time ago when we didn't have all the tools we have now, like the telephone or the internet, or maybe 30 years even, the fax was already much more efficient than sending pigeons from A to B. And so basically one legal entity and employment contracts or any other types of contracts regulate how we work together and how we work towards a certain purpose, defending our country, running a company, whatever. When Bitcoin came along, it brought us this new way of organizing our society. Bitcoin is the first truly decentralized autonomous organization, I would say. What is a decentralized autonomous organization in the end is a distributed network of autonomous stakeholders who are all, as the word says, autonomous. They might not know or trust each other in most cases, and they usually live in geographically disparate places, not in the same place, scattered over the whole globe. There is no centralized legal entity, and there is no employment contract or any other type of contract regulating the relationships of these people who are part of this Bitcoin network. Now, the stakeholders in the case of Bitcoin, and I'm starting with Bitcoin because it was the first kind of instance of these kind of decentralized autonomous organizations, you have different stakeholders. You have the users. Any simple user in the network who holds a Bitcoin wallet runs a node in the end, whether it's a light client or a full client. You have the developers, you have the miners who validate transactions, you have the exchanges, you have a lot of different stakeholders that are involved in that ecosystems, and their roles, what they're allowed to do and how they're incentivized to do whatever they're doing, it's all governed in the code. There is no centralized legal entity, no employment contracts. All the rules of who is allowed to do when and what is in the code. And when certain events are triggered, that code is automatically enforced and transactions are done. Basically, the revolutionary aspect of Bitcoin, it's not the distributed network and everything. It took me a while to understand it myself too. It's how do you get people to do stuff? You reward them with a token. So what is it in Bitcoin? Bitcoin is about having money without banks and bank managers. And how do you do that? You need to pay, or how does it work? Before I say, basically the Bitcoin protocol is open source. Anyone can download it on their computer and start verifying transactions in that peer-to-peer network of computers. If I know you, so if I send you, well, we hardly know each other, so I'm not sure if I trust you, right? If I would send you Bitcoin today, or any kind of, if I would want to send you some funds because I bought something on eBay, I don't know you, I don't trust you, so I want to make sure that if I send you money, it really arrives, and you want to make sure that I actually send real money and it's not a blank check. This is why we usually use a bank or a credit card company or PayPal, which all is the same thing. These institutions are so-called trusted third parties that make sure that assure us that if I send you money, actually I can be sure that you really receive that money and you don't claim that you didn't, so I have to send it again, and vice versa. It avoids the double spending problem in a way between two people who do not know and trust each other. Bitcoin is a protocol that has found a way to validate transactions of sending money peer-to-peer without needing a centralized institution as a clearing function. Because the rules are in the code. Every computer or everyone who has a computer can download this protocol on their computer and start validating transactions. And if I send you funds via Bitcoin, I would do it peer-to-peer without needing a bank. And who validates the transactions? Who checks whether the transaction is valid? In that case, it's not one centralized entity. It's the peer-to-peer network. If the majority of the computers in the network agree that the transaction is valid, because all the computers in the network have the same information about who owned what and when, then the transaction is validated, and the fastest computer to validate a block of transactions gets awarded with Bitcoin. And in that moment, Bitcoin is mined. And Bitcoin is actually the outcome of a productive function to validate transactions in the network and to keep the network safe from attacks. It doesn't come out of thin air. It's actually the output of a productive function, and it's backed with work. And this is also probably why we call it proof of work. You prove that you've done some computational work, and it's mathematically complex, but the point being is you're being rewarded for performing a certain function in the network. And that is the huge game changer. If we go back to the get people to do stuff, reward them in a token. In the case of Bitcoin, the aim is valid, like have peer-to-peer money without banks. So you need to find a mechanism that makes sure that this peer-to-peer network of computers, it's owned by people. And these people don't necessarily know or trust each other. So how do you make sure that they validate the transactions correctly? You need to incentivize them with money in a meaningful way. The design mechanisms are mathematically complex, and they're designed in a way that the network is fault tolerant and attack resistant, which means that even if the majority of the network goes down, the network will still maintain its integrity of validating transactions in a truthful way. And it also is designed in a way to make it super expensive to manipulate the network. You can do it, but it's really, really expensive. You need a lot of computational power, which reflects into a lot of money. And it is possible, but is not feasible for most use cases or for any use case, as a matter of fact. So basically, you can think of tokens or blockchain tokens as programmable money. If you program the governance rules, if you have a certain goal and you want to make people to do stuff, you can now put it into code and let it, and that code can be automatically enforced on a distributed network like a blockchain. And in the case of Bitcoin, it's peer-to-peer money without banks. But we could also incentivize people to reduce CO2 emission by walking instead of taking the car, going by bike instead of taking the car. We could incentivize people to plant trees instead of killing trees, to build houses where they can rent it out to tourists, or start farming crop instead of having a rainforest. And we could do all this with the incentive mechanisms. So let's skip a little bit. So the mining of Bitcoin again, it rewards verifiers, which are the miners, and keeps the network safe. And basically, we're moving away from the centralized world of verifying transactions to a decentralized peer-to-peer or distributed peer-to-peer network. Data is stored in a completely different way, and the actors are incentivized by the token. They're rewarded with the token. And the governance rules are tied to that token. And therefore, we avoid this problem. Any centralized system has always the problem of having a kind of a unique point of failure. If there is any kind of failure, whether it's by accident or on purpose, from outside or inside, by manual corruption or man-made or machine-made, you have this unique point of failure. And a distributed system is designed in a way that even if the majority of the network goes down, the system still maintains its integrity. So it all might sound a little bit like rocket science or a bit futuristic, but it's not, because if we look at what's happening today, we already have a lot of cryptocurrencies. Some call them cryptocurrencies, others call it crypto commodities, some call it tokens. There are many words out there. If you go on CoinMarketCap today, we have over 1,400 so-called cryptocurrencies. Most of them are not currencies. We'll talk about that. And we have a total market capitalization, wait a minute, of, today it was 555 billion US dollars, which is quite a lot given this emerging economy. If we look at Bitcoin alone, it's 118 billion US dollars. That's just the market capitalization of Bitcoin. It doesn't take into account all the companies that are building services on top of Bitcoin and around of Bitcoin. I don't have the total numbers. It would be, I was thinking of it just today. For next time, I'll go into the details of how much the total market cap of the whole Bitcoin ecosystem could be. But what does 200 billion actually mean? I looked up, wait a second. I looked up, yes, company market cap. So we're roughly, with 200 billion, we're roughly in, Alibaba is a bit more, has a slightly higher market cap than Bitcoin, or any bank like HSBC has the market cap of Bitcoin. If we look at countries, so, okay, the top 5, United States, we're already in the trillions, but if we go to number 53, New Zealand has roughly 200 billion, that's the market cap of Bitcoin. And the amazing part is that this entire network is ruled without one centralized entity, entirely by code, and the incentivization works through this token economy. Get people to do things by rewarding them with an intrinsic network token. And that's quite revolutionary, I'd say. So if we think of Bitcoin and the underlying blockchain technology, what it has sparked, people refer to Bitcoin or blockchain as currencies or cryptocurrencies. I'd like to say that it's much more than that. It's much more an operating system for a completely new type of economy. And while it has some resemblance with money, it's much more a new type of asset class. And in order to understand why it is money but it isn't, we probably have to look into what is money in the first place. So who's a specialist on monetary theory here, or an economist? I think we have 1 or 2 people here. No? Okay, I was. So basically, I hope I'm not boring you. I'll skip through this quite fast. The functions of money, or the primary purpose of money, is to facilitate economic exchange. And it's, we need money because it's more efficient to have money than for our economy, if we're talking in terms of efficiency. I don't know if it's a goal, but it's much more efficient than gift economies or barter economies. We have much higher liquidity of trading if we have money, because it's a facilitator. It's basically just a trading technology. We can use money, and we need money as a medium of exchange for trading. It's highly standardized as a measure of value for denominating the price of an asset or a service, but also for doing our bookkeeping, denominating the debts. And it's also a store of value. I can choose to maybe save the money I got now, a value that I got or I generated, I'll save it and spend it later. In order for money to fulfill these functions, it needs to have certain properties. And these properties are liquidity, which means that it needs to be easily tradable at quite low transaction costs. So I could have some livestock, like a cow. I can also use that as money. It doesn't have very high liquidity, especially in Berlin, I'd say, maybe if I would live in a farm somewhere. And it's not easily tradable, so it has quite high transaction costs of transportation, etc. So yes, I could use it as money, as some kind of commodity money, but it's not very liquid. Divisibility, the livestock would not be divisible unless I kill the cow, and then I to do a schinken or something with it, and then I can sell it by ounce. But then I have the problem of durability. Once I kill the cow, I have a problem of durability. Will it withstand a repeated use? or can I use it as a store of value? So if it's not durable, I won't be able to use it as such. Portability, obviously, the cow, well, it runs itself, but not very fast. And cognizability, value must be easily identified. And stability, very important. If we have high inflation or deflation rates, if I don't have stability of money, it's hard to predict my future economic activity, private or public. And I don't know how much money, if I want to save money, and I don't know how, if I have super or hyperinflation, obviously this is a problem. Same thing if I run a company. This is why many governments intervene, central banks. It's not because they're evil. Maybe they are by design, but they need to intervene into the market price of a currency because they try to keep it as stable as possible, because high volatility is counterproductive for high economic activity. And yes, fungibility is also a very important property for money. It's like, I want to make sure if I accept your €5 bill, you didn't take it from somebody who might have stolen it from somebody else. And if somebody finds out that it was stolen at some point, then it's worth nothing. Then I don't know if I can trust you or anyone else, so I don't accept any money anymore. So fungibility is very, very important as well, making sure that every token is treated the same way, no matter what they were used for before. Okay, last but not least, what types of money do we have? So I was already talking a little bit about commodity money. For a long time, we've been using commodity money, but that's not only in the past, like livestock and what else? I don't know. Gold, ounces of gold or silver, anything, shells, furs were typically used for trading as money. We still have that in special situations or special economic zones like prisons. Cigarettes for a long time were used as money, or after the war, also cigarettes and stockings were used as money. And now in prisons you can't smoke anymore. And so because inmates are not allowed to use money, they use the cigarettes as an alternative currency. Now that they're not allowed to smoke, nobody needs cigarettes, and they're trading, I think it's some kind of tinned fish can, something. No, so it's durable because it's canned and you can use it, and so that's the new type of money. So commodity money has always been there, but it has certain limitations of the things that we've been talking about, especially divisibility, durability, portability, maybe not, stability, etc. So if we go, yes. This is why we emerged towards representative money, having a piece of paper that represents some kind of commodity like gold or silver certificate. If I go to the bank, they will have to give me something in exchange. And eventually this emerged to what we today call fiat currency, which is nothing like a commodity money. It's not an ounce of gold that represents really the value that is denominated on that ounce of gold really doesn't represent anymore what is inside the coin. But we have some coins made of less precious metals, or some bills that have a denomination, but they don't have the same intrinsic value. And the face value that is denominated on that banknote is much greater than its material substance. The currencies that we're using today, most of them, especially in the modern world, are fiat currencies. And what is fiat currency? It's established by government regulation, by a central bank, which is very often a governmental or semi-governmental organization. The value is declared by a government. It used to be, a lot of these currencies used to be pegged to something like the gold. We had the gold standards for many decades. We don't have that anymore. The problem with the centralization is that because the value is declared by the government can, if they want, and if they're not responsible, print money as much as they like. And it's happening in certain countries. Then you have hyperinflation, and most people are fucked, except for a few who profit from that system. Luckily for us, our governments right now are a little bit more responsible. And while they do intervene in Europe with monetary policy, they're not yet, at least, contributing to hyperinflation. But they're intervening quite a lot in keeping the currency stable, because actually the currency prices are determined on foreign exchange markets, which means that central banks need to sell or buy their own currencies, sometimes considerable portions of it, to keep it relatively stable, or they will intervene with fiscal policy through taxes or employment, etc. And with all its ups and downsides. So while fiat currencies used to be pegged to scarce commodities, they're not anymore since Bretton Woods. Unfortunately, this is not a monetary talk, but that's an interesting thing to read about. I think something that most people don't know is that most money in circulation today is not physical anymore anyhow. We don't have what we call bargeld, is like a reminiscence of an old world. Like, I think up to 80% of the money in circulation is in digital ledgers, because we all use EC-Karte, credit cards, our internet banking. Nobody actually uses cash except for in Berlin, I know, I'm sorry. But most people don't use that anymore. So the myth of a token, a physical token that is backed by something like gold, I don't know. It's still in people's heads, but it's not the reality of today. Yes, to sum it up, the total monetary supply of a country consists of a currency, which are all the banknotes and coins. I'm simplifying here, and the bank money, which is basically the sum of all the balances held in checking accounts, savings accounts, and other type of investment accounts that you might have in a country. So, is Bitcoin or are cryptocurrencies money or not? So first of all, yes and no. If anything, I think Bitcoin is more commodity money rather than fiat currency. Why? For several reasons. First of all, because it's actually backed by a productive function that it's doing, like keeping the network safe and performing. It's not just printed. There is code that determines how much you're rewarded with in Bitcoin if you keep the network up and running and safe. So it's not just printing money as you like. Second, the production is decentralized. Anyone can download the code, be part of the network, become a miner, and validate transactions. Third of all, there is no centralized institution running Bitcoin. The only centralization, and that's big centralization, is in the code. The code was once written by a group of people, and as long as there is no consensus of how to upgrade the code is the unique point of centralization of this whole thing. But we need consensus on how to upgrade the code. There is no centralized institutions doing that. So all these things, to me, make Bitcoin more commodity money than fiat currency. Also, Bitcoin is money, but it's much more. It's an operating system, and it's a peer-to-peer payment network where I'm able, because of the underlying peer-to-peer infrastructure, it allows me to do peer-to-peer payments without centralized institutions. So traditional currencies don't have that because, I don't know, payment was done by moving it into your hand. This is how it was done. But once we moved onto the computers in the 70s and everything, we moved away from physical money to digital money, to ledger money, we started to get much, much more dependent on financial institutions, and we're also paying very high transaction fees. But that's a different story. So just looking at Bitcoin, not other cryptocurrency, Bitcoin itself has different aspects. Obviously, it's a currency. Why? Because Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency is not only, well, it's not that fungible, it should be liquid. Sorry, it's wrong word. It's a liquid store of value that can be transferred peer-to-peer without the bank or any other middleman. That's the currency aspect, but it's also the fuel of a network. Why? For Bitcoin, you need the Bitcoin token to pay for transaction fees. If I send you money, it doesn't come for free. Apart from the miner getting awarded a block reward, we also pay transaction fees to the miners. And these fees are not paid in euro or any other fiat currency or any other cryptocurrency. They're only paid in Bitcoin. So in a way, Bitcoin is also the fuel of a network. You need Bitcoin to pay for network transaction fees or taxes. Maybe we can refer to them as taxes. And there is also a speculation aspect to Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. Why? Or similar cryptocurrency. Why? Because any stakeholder in the network is incentivized to keep the integrity of the network alive. And the better you do it, the more stable the network is, and the more reliable the network is, probably there will be more people demanding that token, and it will go up in value. So there is this speculation aspect and network effect aspect on that. Okay. That's Bitcoin, but Bitcoin was like 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago. Bitcoin was open source. Anyone could take the code and modify it and do their own better, faster, more anonymous, version of Bitcoin. And people started doing that. Monero, Zcash, what do we have? Dash. They all tried to do an alternative version of Bitcoin that is more scalable, that is more anonymous, etc. They did it by taking the code, the Bitcoin code, forking it, and modifying it in their own way. And then we had other alternative currencies forking the Bitcoin code, trying to do completely different things. Today we looked at Solarcoin. It's one of the older projects that kind of incentivizes people. Every time that you can prove that you have produced 1 kilowatt hour of solar production, you get rewarded 1 solar coin, which is kind of mined in the process of you proving it. The moment you prove that you've produced that solar kilowatt hour, you're rewarded with a solar coin. And the more people participate in that network, the more it will be worth, so the theory. And so on. And many people started doing very interesting things with that Bitcoin code, trying to incentivize different types of behavior. Then Ethereum came along a few years ago. And what Ethereum did is quite revolutionary. I'm not sure that Vitalik actually knew the impact of what would happen. Is basically they said, okay, Bitcoin is great, but it only does one thing, peer-to-peer money transactions. And if you bend backwards in the code, you can maybe incentivize solar production. But what if we create this kind of super decentralized supercomputer, and we decouple like the validation layer of transactions from the smart contract layer, which means that we want to make it super easy, super simple, with a few lines of code to create your own decentralized application, and if you want, your own kind of decentralized organization that is powered by its own network token. And you can do that today with a few lines of code as an application token on the application layer of the Bitcoin network, of the Ethereum network. So the Ethereum network has its own native currency called Ether, and miners are rewarded for validating transactions with Ether that are mined in the process. But on the application layer, over the last 1.5 years, we've had how many ICOs? I don't know. A lot of ICOs conducted initial coin offerings, for those who are not familiar, which basically are fundraising mechanisms that are conducted entirely peer-to-peer on the blockchain. And we looked it up just now. Just in 2017, 4 billion, more or less in US dollars, were raised for cryptocurrency projects. And that's quite a lot of money. It's like we have had ICOs, I don't know, a few hundred probably ICOs, raising funds, and the total was around 4 billion US dollars in cryptocurrencies were raised last year. And basically, anyone today with a few lines of code can create their own token. I can be my own central bank. The question is, what is the purpose of a Shermin token, right? And how do I design the code behind that token? And we have very few best practices of how to do that properly and how to design it correctly. But in theory, with a few lines of code, I can do it. The question is, how sustainable will it be? And will it serve my purpose, etc. So yes, we talked about the ICOs. That's a brief history of ICOs. It's a bit of last year, but we stopped in summer. As I said, in total we raised 4 billion. So the future is a future, I think, of multiple currencies and multiple tokens that have multiple purposes. Whatever I want my token to be, I can create my own token. The question is how many people are going to participate in my decentralized network, how many people and how much liquidity will my token have. That's an aspect, but basically anyone can create a token. And we have a few unresolved problems. We are already in the token economy. The future is here, but we still have price volatility and liquidity problems. Liquidity problems means that if we only have few tokens in circulation, or if everybody is holding their tokens and not trading it, I might have problems of liquidity. Price fluctuation is a problem if I want to use something as a store of value or plan my future based on something that might have price fluctuations. Today we looked at Grantcoin, or what is it called now, Mana? Who knows the Mana project? It's a basic income project on the blockchain. And it's a good idea, but we, like the three of us, agreed that it has some design flaws, because basically there is no incentive to buy the token. And if you don't, an outsider to buy the token, if you have no incentive to buy the token, the price of the token will eventually go down. And this fluctuation is not, that will not be beneficial for the liquidity also in the network. The other question is what I also already addressed, the mechanism design behind such an application token. Yes, it's simple now, especially on Ethereum, to create an app token, but how do I design it? For example, if I want to, I was just in Sri Lanka, and I met some people who are system ecologists in the forest in Sri Lanka with 40 years of experience, right? So they have a lot of experience with forests, but they don't know blockchain. If I take a programmer and without the complexity know-how of how ecology or a forest works, or how forestation will affect, for example, the microclimate in a region, it's nice to plant trees, but what if we plant too many trees? You don't want trees all over the island, and then there are no deserts anymore, and there is no lake anymore. So you can incentivize, but what if you incentivize, you exaggerate, or you have a non-sustainable incentive mechanism design behind your token? What governance mechanisms do you want to have in the token? You can have some design around the governance in the token or around the token, but what if the conditions change over time? Who is going to decide over what governance tool sets do you have? Who has the right to decide that we're going to change the rule set, yes or no? And we don't have those experiences yet of how to do it. So I think the next year we'll be very interested to conduct some research and some real-life applications to see how these first ICOs that were done last year, if we can identify some best practices from tokens that have good design mechanisms. So education is a point, and the other thing is, of course, legislation. If I have a token in Sri Lanka, then legislation is clear. But if I want to create a forest token for the whole world, we have, every country has their own legislation, and the question of what will be incentivized or what will be taxed in which way, in which country, is unresolved. So having a worldwide forced token might be a legal challenge because we have a lot of jurisdictions. To sum it up, distributed incentivization is the big power of blockchain. We can get people to do things by incentivizing them with the token. The question is, how do we want to incentivize them? And we don't know these things yet, so it's very early on in the game. The first ICOs are really the kind of cowboys in the Wild West doing trial and error, and I think it's fair enough that they get a lot of money because they're also taking a lot of risk. Well, the investors are probably taking most part of the risk here. It's like 1990 for the internet. We really don't know how this all will pan out. I personally think that the definition of money as we'll know it will because we can now tokenize everything. And we've been seeing it over the last few months. Two things happened, and I think we will see much more of it in 2018. Tokenizing real assets. Kodak has announced a kind of asset-backed token or a kind of provenance token for Urheberrechte. What is it called? Property rights management, yes. And Venezuela has announced the petrol token, which is basically a very, very simple asset-backed token. They are backing every gallon of petrol produced with a token. Why is that a game changer? Because it can now be traded on any kind of cryptocurrency exchange and doesn't have to go through the regular channels that have less liquidity and where regular investors have less access, let's say. And I think in 2018 we will also see a lot of talks and a lot of startups around incentivizing behavior. How do we incentivize people to do things, to be more sustainable, to be more social? I think what we call in German Wertschöpfung. I don't even know how it's called in English. Who's good? Fahad? What's Wertschöpfung in English? Value creation. Basically the traditional value creation of the economy we live in today is around production of single goods that have ownership, where one single person or a company has ownership. So I produce a table today. It costs me €5, and I sell it for €20. Then I have a value of the Wertschöpfung of 15. Well, then I have to deduct the taxes and everything, but whatever is left is my value creation. But it's my personal ownership. The problem is, because I live in Austria, I am only subject to Austrian laws, or in Germany, I'm just subject to German laws. And if I don't like the laws and I have the means, I can now do jurisdictional arbitrage and go and produce it somewhere else, because the production of that table might be environmentally non-friendly, and it could be cheaper for me to produce it somewhere else because there I don't have to cover the externalities that I'm producing because I'm not being taxed for it in a way. And the problem of the value creation that we're conducting nowadays is that we create a lot of externalities that are not priced in the production of our goods and services, just because the jurisdictional balkanized world we live in today does not meet the realities of a decentralized, globalized world. And what we can do with these kind of incentive mechanisms or incentivizing behavior, we define value creation in a completely new way. We define value as a community value, we give value to a certain type of behavior, like producing clean air by reducing CO2 emission, and we give a price tag to it, and we reward people to it. That's a whole different system logic, and I think it might be the first step for a very, very different kind of economy if we get it right. So if you're interested to learn more, go on our website, blockchainhub.net. You have a lot of background information on blockchain. And yeah, I'm open for questions. Yeah.